Maybe this necklace will finally make you look like you belong in this room. Clara Voss Whitmore, 34-year-old wife of Daniel Whitmore, stood inside the Grand Leora Hotel ballroom on her own birthday while Daniel Whitmore, 36-year-old husband of Clara, held out a black velvet jewelry box in front of everyone. Around them were charity donors, society guests, Richard Whitmore's business associates, and people who had watched Clara smile through years of being treated like she was too simple for the Whitmore name. Beside Daniel stood Vanessa Cross, 31-year-old mistress of Daniel, smirking into her champagne glass like Clara had already been replaced. Then Daniel opened the box. Inside was a necklace he claimed came from Aureline Mason, the same luxury company Richard Whitmore, 64-year-old father of Daniel, had been praising all night as if the brand were a private language for powerful people. Richard clapped proudly and said, "Now that is a real gift. Maybe she'll finally understand quality." Clara's fingers trembled as she touched the necklace, but her face stayed calm. She saw what they did not. The clasp was wrong. The weight was wrong. The certificate used an authentication format Aureline had retired years earlier. The shine was too loud, but everyone else saw only an embarrassed wife being handed a gift she was supposed to be grateful for. Then Daniel lifted his glass and made the humiliation complete. "Since we are all here," he said, "I think it is time to stop pretending. Clara and I have grown apart. I'm asking for separation." The room went silent. No one defended her. Some guests looked down. Richard watched with approval. Vanessa smiled wider, as if Clara's birthday party had become her victory party. But what Daniel did not know was that Clara was the billionaire CEO and majority owner of Aureline Mason. He did not know the company his father worshipped, the brand he had used to insult her, and the empire behind the fake necklace all belonged to the quiet woman he was trying to destroy. He also did not know Clara's attorney was already in the room, and so was the forensic appraiser who could expose the necklace, the forged certificate, and the first real crack in his family's borrowed fortune. Daniel laughed when Clara quietly asked, "Before I answer, may I have the necklace appraised?" That laugh was his final mistake, because the appraiser's words would not only prove the jewelry was fake. They would connect the certificate to other forged Aureline documents Richard Whitmore had used to support loans, inflate collateral, and pretend the Whitmore family was richer than it really was. Some betrayals do not destroy the quiet person. They wake up the part of them that was patient, powerful, and waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. Stay with this story until the end, because the wife Daniel humiliated is the same woman holding the company, the evidence, and the legal power to take away the fake life his mistress wanted, the false fortune his father bragged about, and the family name Daniel worshipped more than love. If you love stories where betrayal meets consequence, subscribe now. And comment Diamond if you believe loyalty should never be mistaken for weakness. The red security light above the diamond table began to flash. Inside the private restoration wing of Aureline Mason, no one moved for 3 seconds. The room held rare stones, old royal necklaces, archived certificates, and jewelry worth more than most people would earn in 10 lifetimes. In a place like this, one wrong record could do more damage than one stolen diamond. A fake certificate could pass through a bank, a collector, an insurer, and a courtroom before anyone touched the jewelry it claimed to protect. Then the double doors opened. Clara Voss Whitmore, 34, the hidden billionaire CEO and majority owner of Aureline Mason, walked in without hurry. To the world outside her company, she was Daniel Whitmore's quiet wife, the woman who wore simple dresses and sat through family dinners while powerful men talked over her. Inside this building, she was the woman whose signature could move hundreds of millions before lunch. The workers lowered their voices the moment they saw her. Mara Ellis, 42, Clara's senior assistant and most trusted employee, stepped forward with a tablet pressed to her chest. Madame Voss, the restoration team found another mismatch in the retired certificate series. Clara did not panic. She never did. She looked at the flashing light, then at the necklace sealed under glass. Another one. Mara nodded. The number belongs to a bracelet restored in 2016, but a third-party appraisal request lists it as a diamond necklace. The request came through a lender's verification desk, not a client. That mattered. A client mistake could be embarrassment. A lender mistake could mean collateral fraud. Clara looked toward the table. Seal the file. No outside access until authentication is complete. Send a copy to legal and risk. Her voice was soft, but everyone obeyed. That was Clara's power. She did not need to shout for people to listen. She wore a simple cream coat, low heels, and a small gold pendant that rested against her collarbone. There were no heavy diamonds on her fingers, no loud watch, no public display of the wealth she owned. Anyone passing her on the street might have thought she was a designer, a teacher, or a woman going quietly to work. They would never guess she owned the luxury company kings, actresses, collectors, and billionaires begged to buy from. Julian Reed, 51, Aureline's legal director and Clara's chief corporate counsel, waited near the long black table with a leather folder in his hand. "The acquisition papers are ready," he said. "480 million. We only need your signature." Clara took the pen. Before signing, her eyes drifted to the wall. There behind museum glass hung an old drawing of a necklace. The lines were uneven but beautiful. A small note at the bottom read, "Elena Voss, 1998. Elena Voss, Clara's late mother and the woman who first taught her jewelry design, had once sold handmade pieces from a rented booth in a crowded market. She never lived to see Clara turn her sketches into one of the most powerful luxury houses in the world." Clara touched the glass gently. In her mind, she heard her mother's voice again. "Real value does not need to shout. One day, let your work speak before your name does." That sentence had shaped Clara's life. It was why she used Voss, her mother's name, in business. It was why Aureline's ownership was protected through private trusts and corporate holding companies. It was why the public saw Aureline's collections, stores, and celebrity clients, but rarely saw Clara's face. And it was why Daniel's family never connected Clara Whitmore, the quiet daughter-in-law they overlooked, to Clara Voss, the woman they had spent years trying to meet. Mara cleared her throat carefully. "Madam, Richard Whitmore's office called again this morning. He is still requesting a private meeting with Aureline's executive board." Clara's hand paused above the acquisition papers. Richard Whitmore, 64, Daniel's father and Clara's father-in-law, had spent years pretending his family was richer and stronger than it really was. He bragged about Aureline Mason at dinners, charity events, and business clubs. He worshipped the brand. He wanted its approval. He had once told a table of guests that a family like his deserved a permanent relationship with houses like Aureline, and he had no idea his son's ordinary wife owned it. A sad smile touched Clara's mouth. "Tell his office we are still reviewing the request." Mara nodded, but her eyes softened. She knew what Clara never said aloud. Clara had protected the Whitmore family more than they deserved. Julian opened another file. "There is also the trade credit extension for the supplier tied to Whitmore Holdings. If you approve it, they avoid default for another quarter." Clara looked down at the document. Months ago, Daniel Whitmore, 36, Clara's husband and Richard's only son, had mentioned over dinner that his father's company was under temporary pressure. He had said it casually, as if Clara would not understand business, as if her little office job could never touch men like Richard. Clara had not corrected him. Instead, she had quietly instructed one of Aureline's subsidiaries to extend trade credit to a supplier connected to Richard's company. It was not a gift. It was not an illegal rescue. It was a structured business extension with collateral, payment terms, and legal review. But it gave Whitmore Holdings breathing room. No one in the Whitmore family knew. Daniel did not know. Richard did not know. Clara wanted no praise. She believed marriage meant protecting the people your spouse loved, even when they did not thank you. She signed. Julian looked at her with concern. "You are very generous to people who do not know who is helping them." Clara closed the file. "I'm not doing it for them. I am doing it because Daniel still loves his family." The moment she said Daniel's name, another memory pulled at her. 3 years earlier, at a charity auction, Clara had quietly bought back one of her mother's first designs. Rain had fallen hard that night. Daniel had appeared beside her with an umbrella and a shy smile. Back then, he had seemed kind. He had not asked what she owned. He had not asked who she knew. He had simply said she looked like someone who carried a lot alone. Later that night, when someone mentioned Aureline Mason, Daniel barely listened to the brand itself. His eyes moved instead toward the powerful men near the champagne table, men with family names, private clubs, and fathers who treated status like religion. Clara noticed it, but she forgave it. She told herself everyone had flaws. When he told her he admired women who were peaceful, not obsessed with status, she believed he had seen her heart. Maybe that was the first mistake. Another memory came, colder than the first. At a Whitmore family dinner, Richard had lifted his wine glass and bragged, "Aureline Mason is not for ordinary people. That brand belongs around real power." Then he had looked at Clara's simple pendant, and laughed lightly. "No offense, Clara, but some worlds are just beyond sentimental little pieces." Daniel had smiled weakly and said nothing. Clara had touched her mother's pendant under the table. She had said nothing too, not because she was empty, because she already knew the truth. Back in the restoration wing, her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel appeared on the screen. "Busy tonight, don't wait up." Clara stared at it longer than she wanted to. Tomorrow was her birthday. The invitation sat on her desk upstairs, printed in soft gold letters, for the elegant party Daniel had insisted on hosting at the Grand Leora Hotel ballroom. Clara had allowed herself to hope it meant something. Maybe he wanted to fix the distance between them. Maybe he remembered who they used to be. Then Mara placed one more paper on the table. "This came through the household expense portal this morning," Mara said gently. "Your house manager flagged it because it was charged to the shared household account under Mr. Whitmore's name." Clara looked down. It was a receipt from a private dealer she did not recognize. The description was vague. "Aureline-style necklace, estate certificate included." Aureline-style, not Aureline. Clara's fingers tightened around the edge of the paper. Julian saw her face change. "Do you want me to open a review?" Clara turned the receipt over once, slowly. "Not yet. I want to know what Daniel plans to do with it." Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Daniel. "Tomorrow will be unforgettable." For the first time, the words did not feel romantic. They felt arranged. Clara turned the phone face down. Then she looked back at the flashing red light above the diamond table, at the certificate mismatch, at the supplier extension, at the receipt in her hand. One thread was a mistake. 2 threads were a pattern. 3 threads were a warning. "Julian," Clara said, her voice quiet, "open a discreet review on that dealer. No contact with Daniel, no warning to Richard, and keep Mara copied." Julian nodded. "Understood." Clara signed one more document that quietly kept Richard's company from falling apart. "Maybe after tomorrow," she whispered, though she no longer believed it fully, "we'll know what we are really dealing with." But across town, Daniel was not busy with work. The video froze on Daniel's hand, resting on another woman's waist. For a moment, Clara could not hear the rain outside the windows of her private office at Aureline Mason. She could not hear the soft hum of the computer. She could not even hear her own breathing. All she saw was Daniel entering the Grand Leora Hotel's private elevator with a woman who leaned into him like she had done it many times before. Mara stood beside the desk, silent and pale. Clara did not cry. She did not shout. She only stared at the screen, as if her heart needed a few seconds to understand what her eyes had already accepted. The woman in the video was Vanessa Cross, 31, a polished investment consultant and Daniel's secret lover. Clara had seen her twice before at charity events. Vanessa had smiled at her with perfect white teeth and called her sweet. Clara now understood that the smile had never been kind. The footage did not come from a bedroom. It did not come from anything illegal. It came from a licensed investigator Evelyn had quietly retained after Clara mentioned the unexplained hotel charges, the hidden calls, and Richard's suspicious financial filings. The investigator had recorded Daniel and Vanessa only in public areas of the hotel, the lobby, the elevator corridor, and the private lounge entrance. That was enough. On the screen, Vanessa kissed Daniel's cheek. Daniel smiled. Then he placed his hand at her lower back and guided her toward the restricted suites. The door closed behind them. Mara lowered her voice. "Madam, I am sorry." Clara's fingers rested on the edge of the desk. She pressed them there until the pain steadied her. "Play the next clip." Mara hesitated. "Please," Clara said. The footage changed. This one came from the hotel lounge entrance later that evening. Daniel and Vanessa stood near a glass wall, laughing with champagne glasses in their hands. Vanessa wore white orchids pinned into her hair. White orchids. Clara slowly looked toward the folder on her desk. That morning, a florist had called Aureline's event office by mistake. The woman on the phone had confirmed a delivery of white orchids to Vanessa Cross, charged through Daniel's card and linked to the birthday event block. Clara had told herself it might be connected to the charity dinner. She had told herself Daniel might be planning something special. Before that, she had noticed the other small things too. Daniel taking private calls in the hallway. Daniel turning his phone face down during dinner. A boutique hotel charge, he said, was for a client meeting. The private dealer receipt that used the words Aureline style instead of Aureline. Each sign had been a small stone dropping into deep water. Clara had heard every splash, but she had refused to look down. Now the water had risen to her throat. Mara clicked open the investigator's written note. There is no audio from the hotel cameras, but the investigator documented part of a conversation overheard in the public lounge. He was seated at the next table. Clara did not blink. Read it. Mara's voice shook slightly. Vanessa said, after tomorrow night, she'll finally understand she was never your level. Daniel replied, she'll sign the separation once everyone sees it's already over. The words struck Clara harder than the image. Not because Daniel wanted to leave. A marriage could break, love could fail, people could grow cold, but this was different. He did not only want to leave her, he wanted to use her birthday as a stage. He wanted guests, lights, whispers, and witnesses. He wanted to make her feel small in front of everyone. Clara leaned back in her chair. The birthday charity dinner was tomorrow night. Daniel had insisted it be held at the Grand Leora Hotel ballroom. He had said he wanted to give her something proper for once. Clara had believed, foolishly and quietly, that maybe he was trying to fix what had been breaking between them. Now she understood. The party was not a celebration. It was a trap. Her phone lay beside the keyboard. She picked it up and called Evelyn Hart, 46, Clara's longtime attorney and closest legal protector. Evelyn had handled Clara's private trusts, marriage agreements, and company protections for years. He was one of the few people outside Aureline who knew exactly how much Clara owned. Evelyn answered on the second ring. Clara's voice was calm but empty. Daniel is having an affair, and he plans to announce a separation at my birthday party tomorrow. There was no shocked gasp from Evelyn, only silence, then the sound of a pen being placed down. I warned you his behavior was changing, Evelyn said, and I warned you Richard's filings looked wrong. Clara closed her eyes. Tell me what I need to do. First, do not confront him tonight. Second, preserve everything legally. The investigator's report, the hotel event records, the florist mistake, the dealer receipt, the household charge, and any messages Daniel voluntarily sent you. Do not touch his private accounts. Do not search his locked devices. We do this cleanly. Clara looked at the receipt on her desk. The vendor name is strange. Lark and Vale Antiquities, not one of ours. Not one I trust. Send it to authentication, Evelyn said, and listen carefully. Your premarital assets are protected. Daniel signed the prenup because he thought you had little to protect. He has no claim to Aureline Mason. The infidelity clause matters, so does the public defamation clause if he humiliates you in front of guests. Clara opened her eyes. He thinks I will be too ashamed to fight. Then let him think that, Evelyn replied. Do not fight him in the ballroom. Let him speak. Let him create witnesses. But if he presents that necklace as authentic Aureline, we need an expert there who can identify it without making the moment look staged. The words were cold, but necessary. Clara ended the call and sent the receipt to Aureline's authentication department. Within minutes, another call came in. Mr. Adrian Bell, 58, Aureline Mason's senior forensic appraiser and a trusted expert in counterfeit luxury jewelry, spoke with a careful tone. Madame Voss, Lark and Vale has appeared in counterfeit-adjacent investigations before. They usually hide behind estate language and private resale paperwork. I cannot prove the item is fake without seeing it, but the wording on this receipt is a warning. Clara looked at Daniel's paused face on the screen. Can you attend the event? Yes, Mr. Bell said. The charity auction already has donated antique pieces that require on-site valuation. I can attend as the appraisal consultant. No one will question it. Good, Clara said. Mr. Bell paused. There is one more issue. The phrase estate certificate included is not normal. If the certificate copies an old Aureline format, it may connect to the retired certificate series we flagged this morning. Clara's throat tightened. The one tied to the lender request? Yes, he said. It may be coincidence, but if it is not, this necklace could show us who has been copying our documents. After the call, the room became quiet again. Mara stood near the door, waiting for instructions, but Clara's mind had drifted into a softer, older pain. 2 years earlier, Daniel had fallen ill during winter. Clara had cancelled a major overseas board meeting to stay by his side. He had been feverish, weak, and ashamed of needing help. She had sat beside him through the night, changing cold towels, holding his hand, whispering that he was not alone. At dawn, he had looked at her and said, "You're the only person who loves me without needing anything from me." That memory broke something inside her now, because the same man who had once held her hand like she was his only safe place was now planning to shame her in a ballroom. Evelyn called back minutes later. "One more thing," Evelyn said. "Does Daniel still not know you own Aureline?" Clara stared at the framed invitation on her desk, her name printed as Clara Whitmore, not Clara Voss. "He knows I work there," Clara said. "He never asked what that meant. He never cared enough to learn the difference between my job title and my name on the ownership documents." Evelyn was silent for a moment. "Then tomorrow, Be careful. Men like Daniel do not fear quiet women until they realize the quiet was mercy. Clara looked once more at the frozen image of Daniel and Vanessa walking together. Do you want to cancel the party? Evelyn asked. Clara's face did not change. No, she said softly. If he wants an audience, let him have one. Outside, the rain struck the glass harder, as if the whole city already knew tomorrow's lights would not be shining for a celebration. The whole ballroom went silent when Daniel walked in with Vanessa beside him. Not behind him, beside him. Clara felt the change before anyone spoke. The music kept playing, the chandeliers kept burning above the gold-trimmed ceiling, and waiters still moved between the tables with silver trays, but something sharp entered the room with Daniel. It moved ahead of him like cold air. Vanessa smiled first. That was what hurt most. She did not look nervous. She did not look ashamed. She walked into Clara's birthday dinner wearing a deep emerald dress that pulled every eye toward her, as if the night had been prepared for her and not for the woman whose name was printed on the invitation. Daniel did not kiss Clara. He came close enough for people to notice that he had arrived, then stopped before touching her. Happy birthday, he said, as if he were greeting a client. Clara held her small smile in place. Thank you, she answered. Across the ballroom, Evelyn watched from near the charity auction table, calm and alert. Mr. Bell sat a few seats away, pretending to study the auction catalogue for the antique pieces donated to the charity sale. Clara knew both of them were there because of what she had discovered the night before. She also knew Daniel did not suspect anything. That was the only thing keeping her steady. The Grand Leora Hotel ballroom had been decorated like a dream. White roses climbed around tall glass pillars. A champagne tower shone under crystal lights. A large birthday cake stood at the center of the room, untouched, covered with soft gold details. Clara had chosen the cake herself 2 weeks ago, back when she still believed Daniel might use this night to come back to her. Now she could barely look at it. Richard stood near a group of business associates, enjoying himself more than anyone. He lifted his glass and spoke loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. My son knows how to host properly. This is the kind of room where real families belong. Then his eyes moved toward Clara. Clara is sweet, of course, quiet, simple, not exactly society material, but sweet. A few guests laughed politely. Clara's hand moved to her mother's pendant. The old gold warmed under her fingers. She could almost hear Elena's voice again. Real value does not need to shout. It was not the first time he had said Aureline's name that evening. Clara had heard him repeat it to donors, bankers, and old friends, each time using the brand like proof that he belonged near greater power. Richard kept talking. Aureline Mason understands legacy. That brand knows power. One day, our family will be in business with them. Clara looked down so no one would see the sadness in her eyes. He was bragging about her company again. He had spent years trying to reach the owner of Aureline Mason while looking through the owner every time she sat across from him at dinner. He wanted her empire, but he had never respected her enough to ask who she really was. Daniel moved through the room with Vanessa at his side, introducing her as a family investment consultant. The words were clean. The truth behind them was not. Vanessa greeted people smoothly, touching Daniel's arm too often, laughing too softly at things that were not funny. She acted like a woman waiting for her place to be announced. Then Clara saw the bracelet. It sat on Vanessa's wrist, bright under the chandelier. The design was not public. It looked too close to an unreleased Aureline archive sketch, one Clara had approved months ago for internal study only. It was not exact, but it was close enough to make Clara's stomach tighten. Had Daniel promised Vanessa access to Clara's world without knowing Clara owned it? Or had Vanessa's dealer sold more than one copy? The thought was so cruel that Clara almost laughed. Instead, she turned toward the cake. For a moment, the ballroom faded, and she remembered Daniel from years ago, standing beside her in the rain with an umbrella, telling her she looked like someone who carried too much alone. She had loved that man. She had trusted him. She had hidden her crown because she wanted to know if his love could survive without it. Now he was walking through her birthday party with another woman and calling it ambition. A spoon tapped against a glass. Daniel stood near the center of the room, smiling like a man about to give a toast. Everyone, may I have your attention? The guests turned. Clara felt Evelyn's gaze on her, but she did not look back. She stood still, hands folded in front of her, face calm. Daniel reached into his jacket and took out a black velvet box. Vanessa's mouth curved slightly. Clara saw it. Daniel held the box out in front of everyone. I wanted to give my wife something that finally makes her look like she belongs in this room. The silence that followed was painful. A few people laughed because they did not know what else to do. Clara accepted the box. Inside was a necklace. At first glance, it looked beautiful, gold links, a bright center stone. A familiar Aureline-style curve. To most of the guests, it probably looked expensive. To Richard, it looked like proof that his son had taste. To Vanessa, it looked like a private joke. To Clara, it looked wrong. The clasp was not Aureline's standard clasp. The setting was too shallow. The weight was slightly off when she lifted it. The certificate tucked beneath the velvet, used an authentication-style Aureline, had retired years earlier. Worse, the serial number pattern looked close to the one Mara had flagged that morning. Daniel had given the owner of Aureline Mason a fake Aureline necklace. Richard clapped. Now that is a real gift. Maybe she'll finally understand quality. Vanessa lowered her champagne glass, her smirk widening. Clara looked at the necklace, then at Daniel. Every part of her wanted to ask him why. Not why the necklace was fake, not even why Vanessa was there, why he had wanted her pain to have witnesses, but she remembered Evelyn's words. Let him speak. So Clara closed the box gently. Thank you, Daniel. Her calm answer seemed to please him. It made him bolder. Daniel lifted his glass again. Since we are all here, I think it is time to stop pretending. Clara and I have grown apart. I am asking for separation. The room froze. Someone gasped softly. Daniel continued, trying to sound wounded and noble. I need a partner who understands ambition, status, and the life my family is building. His eyes moved to Vanessa for half a second. That half second told the whole room enough. Vanessa did not even pretend to be sad. She smiled into her glass like she had already won. Clara stood alone beneath the chandeliers, holding the fake gift her husband had used to dress up her humiliation. It was her birthday. Her husband had brought his mistress. His father was watching with approval. The guests were staring. Everyone thought she had just been reduced to nothing. But Clara did not shout. She did not beg. She did not slap him. She let Daniel believe she was small. Then she raised her eyes and asked quietly, before I answer, may I have the necklace appraised? Daniel laughed. If that makes you feel better. Richard waved a careless hand. Let the poor girl enjoy her gift. Vanessa leaned close enough for only Clara to hear. Some women need proof before they accept they've been replaced. Clara looked at her, calm, still, unreadable. Then a chair moved near the auction table. Mr. Bell rose slowly, buttoning his jacket. If Mrs. Whitmore permits, he said, I can conduct a preliminary authentication now. I am already here as the appraisal consultant for the charity pieces. For the first time that evening, Vanessa's smile became a little less sure. Daniel, still proud and blind, gestured toward the box. Go ahead. Clara placed the necklace back inside the velvet case and slid it across the table. The lid shut with a soft click, but in Clara's heart, it sounded like a lock turning. The first thing Mr. Bell said after opening the velvet box was nothing. That silence was worse than any accusation. Every guest in the ballroom watched his hands. The music had stopped. The waiters stood frozen near the walls with trays in their hands. Even the champagne tower seemed too bright now, throwing sharp little pieces of light across the table where Daniel's birthday gift sat open like a secret waiting to be named. Mr. Bell pulled a pair of white gloves from his jacket pocket and put them on slowly. Daniel laughed under his breath. Are we appraising a necklace or performing surgery? A few guests gave weak smiles. Vanessa laughed softly, but Clara heard the nervous edge inside it. Mr. Bell did not look up. He lifted the necklace from the box with careful fingers and placed it on a black velvet inspection cloth. Then he opened a small leather case and removed a loop, a light pen, and a thin measuring tool. The room seemed to lean closer. Clara stood still beside the table. She could feel the eyes on her. Some were pitying her. Some were waiting for her to break. Some were enjoying the drama because rich people often called cruelty entertainment when it wore a suit. Daniel stood with his shoulders back, still smiling. Richard watched with his glass in hand, his face hard with pride. Vanessa rested one hand over her bracelet, almost without thinking. That small movement did not escape Clara. Mr. Bell examined the clasp first. He turned it under the light, then checked the hinge with a small tool. His face did not change. He moved to the stone, studying the cut, the setting, and the way the light entered it. Then he checked the inner curve of the gold, where Aureline pieces carried a hidden maker's mark too small for ordinary eyes. His silence stretched. Daniel shifted his weight. Well, Mr. Bell picked up the certificate from the velvet box. He looked at the seal, the paper texture, and the serial number. Then he placed the certificate beside the necklace and opened Aureline's secure authentication database on his tablet. Clara watched his eyes. She already knew the necklace was wrong. She had known it the moment she touched it, but knowing something alone was different from hearing it spoken in front of the people who had watched her be humiliated. Mr. Bell entered the serial number. The tablet gave a soft sound. His expression became even more serious. Daniel's smile flickered for the first time. Richard stepped forward. "Is there a problem?" Mr. Bell finally looked up. His voice was calm, clear, and impossible to twist. "My preliminary determination is that this piece is not authentic Oraline Mason." The words landed like glass breaking. The ballroom went completely silent. Daniel blinked. "What?" Mr. Bell placed the necklace down gently. "This necklace was not produced by Oraline Mason." Richard's face flushed. "Impossible. My son bought it from a private dealer." "Then your son was given false information," Mr. Bell said, "or the dealer knew exactly what he was selling." A murmur moved through the guests. Daniel quickly raised one hand, trying to control the room. "Maybe I was deceived. That happens, doesn't it? Private dealers can be dishonest." Clara looked at him. "Who introduced you to the dealer?" Daniel opened his mouth. No answer came. Vanessa's smile thinned. Mr. Bell continued, professional and steady. "The serial number on this certificate does exist, but it belongs to a discontinued bracelet from a private collection, not to a necklace." Richard's hand tightened around his glass. "The certificate seal is forged," Mr. Bell said. "The stone is listed as natural, but the visual indicators are consistent with lab-grown material. The gold content stamp does not match the weight. The clasp is not Oraline standard. The setting imitates Oraline's old design language, but the proportions are wrong. This is a copy." The word copy seemed to burn Daniel's face. Only minutes earlier, he had told Clara the necklace would make her look like she belonged in the room. Now everyone in that room knew he had given her a fake jewel on her birthday. Clara looked down at her mother's pendant. The old gold was warm against her skin. For a moment, the bright ballroom disappeared, and she was a girl again, sitting beside Elena Voss at a tiny work table in the back of a rented shop. Her mother had placed 2 chains in Clara's palm. One was real gold. One was cheap plating. "Close your eyes," Elena had said. Clara had done as she was told. "Feel the weight," her mother whispered. "Feel the truth. Fake things always shine too loudly." Back then, Clara thought her mother was only talking about jewelry. Now she understood the lesson had always been bigger. Fake love shined loudly too. Fake pride, fake wealth, fake people who needed a crowd before they could feel powerful. Clara lifted her eyes. Daniel was no longer smiling. He looked angry now, but the anger was not at himself. It was at the fact that the lie had failed. Richard turned on Mr. Bell. "And who exactly are you to speak for Oraline Mason?" Several guests looked toward the appraiser. Mr. Bell straightened. "I am the senior forensic appraiser for Oraline Mason." The reaction was instant. A sharp whisper moved through the ballroom. Men who had been laughing with Richard minutes earlier suddenly became quiet. Women glanced at the necklace, then at Richard, then at Clara. Oraline Mason was not just any luxury brand. It was the brand Richard had spent the evening praising. It was the name he had used to measure status. And now one of its own experts had declared Daniel's gift fake. Richard's confidence cracked, but only slightly. "Then you should know mistakes happen. Perhaps your records are incomplete." Mr. Bell's voice stayed polite. "Our records are not incomplete." Vanessa took half a step back. Mr. Bell's eyes moved to her wrist. "Miss Cross, that bracelet appears to use a similar design language. May I examine it as well?" The request was gentle. Vanessa's reaction was not. "No," she said too quickly. "This has nothing to do with me." That single word changed the room again. No, it was too sharp, too afraid, too defensive for an innocent guest wearing a simple bracelet. Evelyn, standing near the auction table, lowered her eyes to her phone and typed something. Clara knew what she was doing, recording the names, the statements, the reactions, and the time, turning Daniel's public cruelty into evidence, exactly as she had promised. Daniel noticed Evelyn for the first time. "Why is your attorney here, Clara?" Clara did not answer him. She was watching Vanessa. The bracelet on Vanessa's wrist looked less like a coincidence now and more like a thread. If someone pulled it, something larger might unravel. Mr. Bell picked up the certificate again. This time he studied it longer. He rubbed the edge of the paper between 2 gloved fingers, then checked the seal under the light. The silence returned, deeper than before. Clara saw his face change, not shock, recognition. Looked at the serial number again, then at the printed seal, then at the false authentication code below it. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, "this certificate pattern is familiar." Richard went still. Daniel stopped breathing for a second. Mr. Bell looked from the document to Clara. This appears to match the same retired certificate format involved in several lender verification requests Aureline has been reviewing. Clara turned slowly toward Evelyn. Evelyn met her eyes and gave one small nod. Mr. Bell chose his next words carefully because the room was full of witnesses. I cannot make a legal conclusion from this table, but I can say this is unlikely to be a random counterfeit. This certificate was copied from an old Aureline format, and similar copies have appeared in documents connected to Whitmore Holdings. The necklace had only been the first lie. The next one was waiting inside Richard Whitmore's fortune. The ballroom exploded into whispers the moment Mr. Bell said similar forged Aureline documents had appeared in records connected to Whitmore Holdings. Daniel stepped toward Clara so fast that two guests moved out of his way. Clara, this has gone far enough, he said, his voice low and sharp. You are embarrassing yourself. Clara did not move. That was the part Daniel did not understand. He thought silence meant fear. He thought stillness meant weakness. Thought because she had not screamed, she had nothing left to say. Evelyn stepped between them before he could come closer. Her face was calm, but her eyes were hard. Mr. Whitmore, from this moment forward, all communication regarding separation, assets, and accusations goes through Mrs. Whitmore's counsel. Daniel stared at her. Counsel? Yes, Evelyn said. Hers. For the first time that night, Daniel looked unsure. Richard pushed through the crowd, red-faced and angry. This is ridiculous. My family will not be insulted by a fake expert and my son's emotional wife. Mr. Bell, still standing beside the velvet box, did not react. He only placed the necklace and certificate back on the inspection cloth, careful not to disturb them. Clara finally spoke. The party is over. No one argued. The band did not play again. The cake remained untouched. Guests collected their coats in silence, carrying the story out with them in whispers. The birthday dinner Daniel had planned as Clara's humiliation had become something else, a room full of witnesses. Clara turned away from Daniel and walked toward a private side room near the ballroom. Evelyn followed. Mara appeared at the door with a small evidence pouch, a tablet, and the quiet urgency of someone who had been waiting for this exact signal. Mr. Bell came behind them, holding the velvet box carefully with both hands. Daniel tried to follow. Evelyn stopped him with one raised palm. Not another step. Daniel looked past her at Clara. You cannot hide behind a lawyer because your feelings are hurt. Clara looked back at him once. You asked for separation in front of everyone. I am giving you the proper process. Then she entered the side room and closed the door. Inside, the sound changed. The ballroom whispers became a dull hum behind the walls. The small room smelled of polished wood, flowers, and rain from coats hung near the entrance. Clara stood still for a moment, as if her body had reached safety before her heart did. Then her hand began to tremble. Mara noticed but said nothing. Evelyn noticed too. Sit down, Clara. Clara sat, not because she was weak, but because the weight of the night had finally reached her bones. Evelyn opened her leather folder on the table. We move carefully from here. What happened tonight is not just a marital issue, it is evidence. Clara looked at the velvet box. Evidence. That word felt strange beside the word birthday. Evelyn continued. Daniel publicly requested separation. He publicly presented a counterfeit luxury item as authentic. Multiple guests heard him identify it as Aureline. Vanessa Cross was present and may be tied to the purchase. Richard reacted defensively the moment forged documents were mentioned. Mr. Bell identified a certificate pattern already under review by Aureline's risk division. Mr. Bell nodded. The certificate is not a simple fake. It copies an internal format used years ago, but with changes only someone familiar with luxury authentication would attempt. Not perfect, but not random. Clara's eyes moved to him. You think there are others? I think this one may belong to the same group as the lender requests, he said. And if the Whitmore name appears on related documents, we need to know how deep it goes. Evelyn turned to Mara. Preserve everything, party video, hallway cameras, event staff statements, the vendor receipt, florist records, the investigator's report, Daniel's public statements, all Aureline authentication records connected to the copied certificate format, nothing from private accounts unless obtained legally through discovery. Mara typed quickly. Evelyn looked at Mr. Bell. The necklace and certificate must be sealed separately. Mr. Bell placed the items into separate evidence sleeves. He labeled them with time, location, item description, and his name. He did it with the care of a man who knew one small mistake could let a liar escape through a crack. Clara watched him seal the necklace Daniel had given her less than an hour earlier. A gift became evidence. A birthday became a case. A marriage became a file. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to breathe. Evelyn made 2 calls. The first was to Aureline's internal risk division. The second was to a forensic accounting team that had already been reviewing verification requests involving Whitmore Holdings. Clara listened without interrupting. Each sentence made the room feel smaller. While Evelyn spoke, Clara stared at the flowers on the side table. White roses, beautiful, expensive, and already bending at the edges. She thought of Daniel's face when he had announced the separation. He had not looked sorry, he had looked proud, as if leaving her was not enough unless other people watched her fall. Then she thought of Vanessa's whisper, "Some women need proof before they accept they've been replaced." Clara closed her eyes. For years she had made herself smaller around Daniel's family, not because she was ashamed of her success, but because she wanted a place where love did not feel like a transaction. Her company had been built from her mother's grief, talent, and hope. Her wealth had never been a costume, it was a responsibility. She had hidden it because she wanted Daniel to choose her heart first. Instead, he had chosen the illusion of power. Evelyn ended the call and returned to the table. Her expression had changed. "What did they find?" Clara asked. Evelyn sat across from her. "Aureline's risk division has 3 pending verification requests from lenders. All 3 involve luxury assets listed in documents connected to Whitmore Holdings. All 3 certificates claim Aureline authentication. Aureline has no record of issuing them." Clara's body went cold. Mr. Bell looked grim. "And now the necklace certificate shows the same copied format." Mara stopped typing. The room went quiet. Evelyn spoke carefully. "If those documents were used to support loan values, Richard may have been inflating collateral with forged appraisals and counterfeit certificates. The necklace may only be the piece that brought the pattern into public view." Clara looked down at her hands. Only that morning, she had signed another quiet trade credit extension to keep Richard's supplier from default. She had believed she was helping Daniel's family survive temporary pressure. She had reviewed payment history, supplier risk, and business continuity. She had not known Richard might be using fake luxury assets somewhere else to borrow against a fortune he did not truly have. Now it looked like she might have been helping a lie breathe longer. "I thought I was saving his family," Clara said softly. "I didn't know I was giving them time to hide the truth." Evelyn's voice softened. "You gave them lawful business support. They used your mercy as cover." Those words hurt because they were true. Outside the side room, Daniel's voice rose in the hallway. "She is being dramatic," he snapped. "She cannot afford a long divorce. She will sign whatever I put in front of her." Vanessa answered, low but clear enough through the door. She looked broken. "Push hard now." Clara opened her eyes. Daniel still thought she was small, even now, even after Mr. Bell, even after Evelyn, even after the forged certificate. He still believed she was a woman with no money, no power, and no way to fight. Evelyn glanced toward the door, then back at Clara. "Do you want me to respond?" Clara shook her head. She stood slowly and walked to the table where the velvet box rested. Mr. Bell opened it one last time. The fake necklace lay inside, glittering under the light, still pretending to be precious. Clara picked it up with gloved fingers and placed it into the evidence bag herself. Then she sealed it. Her voice was quiet, but every person in the room heard it. "He gave me a lie on my birthday," she said. "Let's find out how many he inherited." Across the hallway, Daniel was still speaking like a man who believed the world belonged to him. By morning, he would step into a building where that belief would begin to die. Richard Whitmore slammed his hand on the security desk so hard that the marble lobby seemed to answer. "I want the person in charge," he snapped. Now, the security guards did not move. That made him angrier. Aureline Mason headquarters rose around him like a quiet palace. The floors were pale marble. The walls held framed sketches of Elena Voss's earliest designs. Behind thick glass cases, rare necklaces and old royal pieces rested under soft lights. Every corner of the building looked calm, expensive, and untouchable. Richard hated that calm. Daniel stood beside him with a tight jaw and tired eyes. He had not slept after the birthday party. His humiliation had followed him home, into his phone, into every message he refused to open. Vanessa stood slightly behind him, dressed perfectly, but her confidence had cracks in it now. Her eyes kept moving toward the security cameras. Richard pointed toward the elevators. "Tell your executives that Richard Whitmore is here. Your appraiser insulted my family in public. I will not leave until someone answers for it." The receptionist looked at her screen. "Mr. Whitmore, you are expected." Richard blinked, surprised. Expected. Before he could ask more, 2 security doors opened with a soft sound. Mara stepped out. "This way, please." Richard gave her a cold look. "At least someone here understands urgency." Mara said nothing. She led them past glass walls, private display rooms, and employees who looked up as they passed. Daniel noticed something strange. People were not looking at Richard with fear. They were looking past him, toward the elevator at the far end of the hall, as if waiting for someone else. They entered a large boardroom with a long black table. Evelyn sat near the center, her folder already open. Mr. Bell stood beside a display screen. Nadia Chen, 49, Aureline Mason's general counsel and Clara's highest-ranking company lawyer, sat at the head of the legal team. Miles Grant, 55, a forensic accountant hired to examine suspicious Whitmore financial records, had a laptop open before him. Paul Hargreaves, 58, a senior representative from Richard's main lending bank, sat stiffly with a sealed file in front of him. Helena Duval, 62, a senior Aureline board member, and Marcus Vale, 54, Aureline's finance committee chair, watched in silence. Richard stopped at the door. For the first time, he looked less certain. Then the elevator doors opened. Clara stepped out, not in the soft dress she had worn at the party. Not as the embarrassed wife standing under chandeliers. She wore a clean white suit, her mother's pendant, and the calm face of a woman who did not need anyone's permission to enter her own room. Every employee in the hallway lowered their heads slightly. "Madame Voss," Nadia said. Daniel went still. Richard looked from Nadia to Clara, then laughed once, sharp and forced. "What is this? Why is she here?" No one smiled. Clara walked to the head of the table and stood behind the chair Richard had expected some powerful stranger to occupy. Nadia's voice was clear. "Mrs. Clara Voss Whitmore is the majority owner and chief executive officer of Aureline Mason." The room did not move. Daniel's face drained of color. Richard stared around the table, waiting for someone to correct her. No one did. Vanessa's hand slipped from Daniel's arm. Clara looked at Richard, and for a moment she saw every dinner where he had dismissed her, every laugh at her simple pendant, every speech about power, every time he had praised Aureline Mason while treating her like a woman lucky to sit near his family. Her voice stayed gentle. "You once told me Aureline Mason was for people beyond my reach." Richard opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Daniel stepped forward. "You lied to me." Clara turned to him slowly. There was pain in her eyes, but no weakness. "I told you I worked with Aureline. You decided I was too small to matter here." Daniel flinched as if the words had touched something deeper than pride. Clara remembered the first year of their marriage when she had almost told him everything. More than once she had come close, but each time Daniel had made some small comment that stopped her. A joke about rich women being difficult. A complaint that powerful wives made men look weak. A proud smile when Richard called Clara simple and safe. So she had waited. She had hoped love would grow first. Instead, his contempt had. Nadia gestured to Mr. Bell. "Please begin." Mr. Bell placed the birthday necklace certificate on the screen. Beside it, 3 more documents appeared. Each carried Aureline's name. Each had a seal that looked official to anyone outside the company. Mr. Bell spoke carefully. "All 4 certificates are forged. The first came from the necklace presented to Mrs. Whitmore last night. The other 3 were attached to asset records submitted by Whitmore Holdings to support loan collateral." Richard's face hardened. "That is impossible." Miles turned his laptop slightly. "Your company listed several luxury pieces as collateral for loans and insurance-backed valuations. The values were inflated. The certificates used to support those values claim Aureline authentication, but Aureline has no record of issuing them." Paul opened his sealed file. "Mr. Whitmore, the bank requires immediate verification of all collateral listed in these loan documents. Until verification is complete, your credit line is suspended." Richard gripped the back of a chair. "This is a misunderstanding." "Then verification should be simple," Paul said. Silence followed. It was not simple. Everyone in the room knew it. Daniel looked between his father and the screen. The truth was reaching him slowly. The family fortune he had bragged about, the status he had chosen over Clara, the future he thought Vanessa represented, all of it was beginning to look like paper-painted gold. Clara did not raise her voice. "Aureline Mason will cooperate fully with the bank, insurers, and investigators. We will also terminate all trade credit extensions connected to Whitmore Holdings until all records are verified." Daniel frowned. "What credit extensions?" Evelyn answered before Clara could. "The extensions that kept your father's supplier network from defaulting 6 months ago." Daniel turned to Clara. His expression changed completely. For the first time, he was not looking at the quiet wife he thought he could discard. He was looking at the woman who had been holding the floor beneath his family's feet. Richard shook his head. "You cannot do this." Clara's face remained calm. "I am not doing anything to you, Richard. I am only stopping what I was doing for you." That sentence landed harder than anger could have. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. "Clara, why didn't you tell me?" Clara looked at him, and the pain she had been holding finally showed. "Because I was waiting for you to love me before you knew what I owned." No one spoke. Then Paul's phone buzzed on the table. He looked at the screen and his expression darkened. "Mr. Whitmore," he said quietly, "the bank has formally frozen your company's credit line pending investigation." Daniel reached for the chair beside him, but his hand missed the edge. And for the first time in his life, Richard Whitmore looked like a man hearing the sound of his own empire cracking. Daniel's credit card declined in front of a room full of people. The restaurant was quiet, expensive, and full of faces he knew. 2 weeks earlier, he would have smiled at the waiter, signed the bill, and left without checking the total. But now the waiter stood beside him with the black leather folder still open, his polite expression turning careful. Daniel tried another card, declined, then another, declined again. Across the table, Vanessa stared at him as if he had become someone she did not recognize. Her phone was already in her hand. She was not calling for help. She was checking whether anyone had seen. Daniel's face burned. "There must be a bank issue." The waiter nodded softly, pretending not to hear the whispers from the next table, but Daniel heard them. "Whitmore, fake necklace, Aureline, Clara Voss." The words followed him everywhere now. The collapse had not happened in one loud crash. It came in steps, each one colder than the last. First, the bank froze Whitmore Holdings' credit line after Paul's review. Then lenders demanded updated collateral records. Then insurance investigators asked for proof of the luxury assets Richard had listed. Then suppliers stopped shipments until old invoices were paid. Then investors delayed meetings. Then delayed became cancelled. Daniel learned too late that his name was not only attached to the family reputation, it was attached to the debt. Richard had convinced him to sign personal guarantees on 2 company credit lines, calling it a formality for the heir. Daniel had signed without reading deeply because he trusted the fortune he had spent his life bragging about. By the 3rd day, Richard's office phones rang without anyone answering. By the 5th day, business partners stopped using his first name. By the 7th day, the Whitmore name no longer sounded powerful. It sounded risky. At Aureline Mason, no one shouted, no one celebrated. There were only clean documents, sealed evidence, and quiet signatures. Evelyn sent formal letters. Nadia's legal team preserved records. Mr. Bell signed authentication statements. Miles completed the first forensic report. Every document said the same thing in a different way. The Whitmore fortune had been supported by borrowed money, inflated values, and forged beauty. Clara did not appear in the news. She did not post anything. She did not give interviews. That made it worse for Daniel. If she had screamed, he could have called her bitter. If she had insulted him, he could have called her emotional. But she gave him nothing to fight. She simply removed her protection and let the truth stand on its own. She did not destroy him by screaming. She destroyed him by no longer saving him. Daniel understood that slowly, and the understanding felt like a door closing in every room of his life. His apartment application was rejected the next morning. The leasing agent said it was because of financial uncertainty and pending legal matters. Daniel wanted to argue, but the words pending legal matters sat in his mouth like stones. His name had appeared in filings tied to the counterfeit necklace, the public separation, and the forged certificate trail. Evelyn had moved fast. The birthday party video, hotel records, vendor receipt, investigators' report, and Mr. Bell's authentication statement were all preserved. Daniel had thought the party would make Clara too ashamed to fight. Instead, it had given her witnesses. Richard blamed him for everything. "You brought that necklace into the room," Richard shouted in the family office where boxes were already being packed. "You let that appraiser touch it. You made this public." Daniel stared at his father. "You used fake certificates before I ever bought that necklace." Richard's eyes went hard. "I kept this family alive." "No," Daniel said, voice breaking. "Clara did." The words surprised them both. For the first time, Daniel saw the shape of the truth, the trade credit extensions, the supplier delays that somehow became solved, the meetings Richard could never secure with Aureline, yet the strange mercy that kept arriving from hidden channels. Clara had been standing behind it all, silent and unseen, and he had called her small. That night, Daniel sat alone in his car outside the family mansion. A real estate sign had been placed near the iron gate. The house was not officially gone yet, but everyone knew why the sign was there. Emergency sale, quiet liquidation, a rich family trying to look calm while furniture disappeared through the back door. His phone lit up with another message from a former friend. Sorry, not a good time to meet. Another one came after that. Let things cool down first. Then another. My firm has advised me to avoid involvement. Daniel laughed once, but it sounded empty. He remembered Clara sitting at their dining table late at night, reading contracts under a small lamp. He used to walk past her and say, "You act like the world depends on your little office job." She would only smile tiredly and close the folder. Now he knew, the world he had lived in did depend on that office job. Across the city, Clara was still in that world, walking through Aureline Mason after midnight. The building was quiet. Most employees had gone home. Only the soft lights over the display cases remained. The jewels glowed without noise, as if they had nothing to prove. Clara entered her office and opened the bottom drawer of her desk. Inside was a wedding photo. Daniel was smiling in it, not the cruel smile from the birthday party, not the proud smile from the boardroom. A younger, softer smile, the one she had trusted. Clara touched the edge of the photo. She did not feel victory. That was what no one outside could understand. Winning did not erase the years she had loved him. Power did not make betrayal painless. Money did not stop the memory of his hand in hers when he once called her his safe place. Evelyn stood by the doorway, holding a final authorization folder. You do not have to pretend this does not hurt. Clara lowered the photo. Everyone thinks I am taking revenge. You are stopping fraud, Evelyn said, and ending a marriage Daniel chose to break in public. Clara looked down at the picture again. I still mourn who I thought he was. Evelyn's voice softened. You can mourn him without saving him again. The sentence settled over Clara like a hand on her shoulder. Her phone began to vibrate on the desk. Daniel. She watched his name appear, disappear, then appear again. She did not answer. A minute later, a voicemail arrived. Then another call, then another. Each one felt like a knock from a house that had already burned down. Clara opened the folder Evelyn had brought. The authorization allowed Aureline Mason to cooperate fully with investigators, release authentication evidence, support lender review, and pursue civil claims for the misuse of its name. Once she signed, there would be no quiet road back for the Whitmores. Her hand trembled over the page, not because she doubted the truth, because signing meant accepting that love had not been enough to save a man who chose pride over her. Daniel called again. Clara placed the wedding photo face down in the drawer. Then she signed. Across town, Vanessa looked at the same news alert on her phone and quietly deleted every photo she had ever taken with Daniel. Vanessa's phone would not stop shaking in her hand. One notification came after another. Messages, missed calls, tagged videos, cancelled invitations, a brand email with the subject line, partnership pause, another from a charity board asking her to step back until the matter is resolved. Matter. That was what people called scandal when they wanted to sound polite. Vanessa stood in the middle of her apartment, still wearing the silk robe Daniel had once told her made her look like a woman born for wealth. On the floor beside her bed, an open suitcase waited. Half of her expensive dresses were already inside it. She moved quickly, almost angrily, deleting photos from her phone. Daniel at dinner. Delete. Daniel beside her in a hotel elevator. Delete. Daniel's hand on her back at Clara's birthday party. Delete. She opened her social media account and removed every post from the Grand Leora Hotel. Then she changed one caption from private celebration to nothing at all. She thought if she moved fast enough, she could erase herself from the story, but the story was moving faster. Guest phone videos from the birthday party had already spread through private society chats before reaching the public. At first, people had shared it because Daniel had given his wife a fake necklace. Then they shared it because Clara had been revealed as the owner of Aureline Mason. Then someone paused the video at the exact second Vanessa smiled into her champagne glass while Clara held the velvet box. That smirk became a picture. That picture became her name. Vanessa tried calling Daniel again. No answer. She threw the phone onto the bed, then picked it up immediately because she could not bear not knowing what people were saying. Another email arrived. Aureline Mason had released a formal statement. Vanessa opened it with trembling fingers. The statement was calm, professional, and deadly. It warned clients about counterfeit pieces circulating with forged certificates. It confirmed that Aureline was cooperating with investigators, lenders, and insurers. It did not name Vanessa. It did not need to. People already knew enough. Worse. Evelyn had sent a separate legal notice through proper channels. It named Lark and Vale Antiquities, the counterfeit vendor Daniel had used. It referenced the birthday necklace receipt, and it instructed Vanessa to preserve all communications connected to the seller, the bracelet on her wrist, and any Auraline-style pieces purchased through private channels. Vanessa sank onto the edge of the bed. She had thought the necklace would be a joke, not a crime, not evidence, not the beginning of the end. A week earlier, she had met Daniel in a private lounge and pushed the dealer's card across the table. "He can get Auraline-style pieces without the stupid price," she had said. "No one will know." Daniel had frowned. "Clara might notice." Vanessa had laughed. "Clara, please. She wears that old little pendant like it is treasure. She will think anything in a velvet box is luxury." Daniel had laughed too. That memory now made Vanessa's skin feel cold, because Clara had noticed everything. The clasp, the stone, the certificate, the lie. Vanessa stood and walked to her mirror. She looked at herself, trying to find the woman who had walked into the ballroom beside Daniel as if she had already won. The face looking back at her seemed smaller. Her phone rang. "Daniel," she answered immediately. "Where have you been?" "Trying to keep my life from falling apart," Daniel snapped. Vanessa gripped the phone. "Your life, my name is everywhere. My brand deal with Leora Skin was suspended. The Women's Foundation removed me from next month's guest list. Richard's contacts are not answering me." Daniel laughed bitterly. "Richard's contacts are not answering Richard. You said your family was untouchable," Vanessa said. Daniel's voice went low. "You said the necklace would fool her." The silence between them was ugly. For months, their affair had been dressed up as romance, secret dinners, soft lies, promises about a future after Clara. Vanessa had told herself Daniel loved her because she understood ambition. Daniel had told himself Vanessa made him feel powerful. But now there was no money shining around them, no status to hide behind, no future waiting open, only blame. "You should have told me Clara was connected to Auraline," Vanessa said. "I didn't know," Daniel said. "You were married to her. She never told me she owned it." Vanessa closed her eyes. "Maybe you never asked." Daniel said nothing. That silence frightened her more than his anger, because for the first time, even Daniel seemed to understand that Clara had not been the fool in their story. Vanessa ended the call before he could. She walked to the living room, where a framed photo from a charity event sat on a side table. In it, Clara stood beside her, smiling gently. Vanessa remembered that night clearly. It had been 6 months before the birthday party. Clara had worn a simple black dress and her mother's pendant. Vanessa had been friendly then, warm enough to seem harmless. She had leaned close and said, "You're lucky to have a man like Daniel. Some women would do anything for that life." Clara had only smiled and replied, "I hope no one ever has to become someone else to be loved." At the time, Vanessa had thought Clara was naive. Now the words returned with a sting. Vanessa had not only been Daniel's mistress, she had also stood near Clara, accepted her kindness, and mocked her behind her back. She had wanted the marriage, the family name, the mansion, the parties, the illusion of a golden life. She had wanted to step into Clara's place because she believed Clara's place was small. But Clara's place had never been small. It had been hidden. Her phone buzzed again. A message from one of Richard's former associates appeared. "Do not contact me again. Legal review underway." Another message followed from a boutique brand she had promoted. "All future collaborations are cancelled." Then came a notice from Evelyn's office, formal and cold. "Preserve all communications with Lark and Vale Antiquities, Daniel Whitmore, and any third party involved in the purchase or promotion of counterfeit Auraline-style items." Vanessa read it twice. Preserve all communications. That meant they already had enough to know where to look. Across the city, Clara did not call Vanessa. She did not threaten her. She did not send cruel messages. Clara never once lowered herself into the mud Vanessa had prepared for her. Evelyn handled everything: demand letters, evidence submissions, cooperation with investigators, civil claims for misuse of Auraline's brand, a clean legal wall closing in from every side. That was what made Clara terrifying now, not anger, control. Vanessa returned to her phone and opened the video again, even though she knew it would hurt. Clip showed the ballroom, the velvet box, Daniel's false smile, Clara's still face. Then it paused on Vanessa, her smirk. Someone had circled it in red. The comments beneath it moved too quickly to read all at once. She thought the wife was poor. She smiled before the truth came out. Imagine helping buy a fake necklace for the woman who owns the company. That smirk aged badly. Vanessa stared until the screen blurred. The expression she had worn as victory was now the image destroying her. Then a new message appeared at the top of the screen. It was from Daniel. "I need to see Clara, tonight." Vanessa looked at the message. and for the first time she understood that Daniel was no longer running toward her. He was running back to the woman he had already lost. Daniel stood outside Aureline Mason headquarters in the rain, looking like a man the city had already forgotten. Water ran down his face and soaked the collar of his coat. He had no driver waiting at the curb. No luxury watch on his wrist. No father standing beside him with proud advice. No Vanessa holding his arm like a prize she had won. No friends calling. No security guard rushing to open doors for him. Only rain. Only glass doors. Only the empire he had once mocked without knowing his wife owned it. He had been standing there for almost an hour. Every few minutes, he looked through the lobby windows, hoping to see Clara. Employees passed inside, warm and dry, but no one came to help him. Some recognized him, some looked away. That hurt more than open hatred. He used to be welcomed in beautiful rooms. Now he was the warning whispered inside them. A black company car pulled up near the entrance. Daniel straightened quickly. The rear door opened, and Clara stepped out beneath a wide black umbrella held by a security officer. Evelyn stepped out behind her, carrying a leather folder. Clara wore a dark coat, her mother's pendant, and the same quiet expression that had terrified him more than anger ever could. Daniel rushed forward. 2 security officers moved at once, blocking him before he reached her. "Clara, please," Daniel said, "just 5 minutes." Evelyn stepped beside Clara. "Mrs. Voss Whitmore is not obligated to speak with you." Daniel looked at Clara, not Evelyn. I know that, but please, I need to say it to you, not through lawyers." Clara watched him for a long moment. Rain struck the umbrella above her, steady and cold. Years ago, Daniel had been the one holding an umbrella over her after the charity auction. He had smiled then, warm and gentle, and told her no one should walk alone in weather like that. She had believed the kindness was real. Now he stood outside in the rain, and Clara was the one protected. The mirror of it cut deeper than she expected. 5 minutes, Clara said. Evelyn looked at her. "Clara." "I know," Clara answered softly. "I need to hear him once, then I can be done." The security officers stepped back but stayed close. Daniel swallowed. Up close he looked smaller. His eyes were red. His jaw was unshaven. His expensive confidence had been washed from him, leaving only fear. "I was confused," he began. "Everything was moving too fast. Vanessa got in my head. My father kept saying you were not right for the future we needed. He made me feel like I had to choose someone who understood status." Clara said nothing. Daniel rushed on, afraid of her silence. "I didn't know who you were. I didn't know you owned Aureline. If I had known, that is the problem," Clara said. He stopped. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the rain. "You did not leave because you misunderstood me. You left because you believed I had nothing to offer you." Daniel's face tightened. Clara looked at him and saw flashes instead of one memory. She saw herself making late-night calls to keep Richard's supplier network alive while Daniel slept upstairs. She saw family dinners where Richard mocked her pendant and Daniel looked away. She saw the hotel footage of Daniel walking with Vanessa. She saw the fake necklace in the velvet box. She saw Vanessa's smirk. She heard Daniel's voice in the ballroom, calm and cruel, asking for separation in front of everyone. Every memory was short, sharp, and complete. The rain kept falling. Daniel shook his head. "I made a mistake." "No," Clara said. "A mistake is forgetting a birthday. A mistake is saying something careless and regretting it. You planned my humiliation. You brought her to my party. You let your father mock me. You gave me a fake necklace and called it a gift." His mouth opened, then closed. "You wanted me small," Clara continued. "That was not confusion. That was character." Daniel looked down. For the first time, he had no quick answer. Evelyn stepped forward and opened the folder. "Mr. Whitmore, these are the revised separation agreement and civil notices." Daniel stared at the papers as if they were written in another language. Evelyn's tone stayed professional. "The agreement is fair but firm. You receive no access to Mrs. Voss Whitmore's premarital assets. The infidelity clause applies. The public defamation clause applies due to your statements at the birthday event. Mrs. Voss Whitmore reserves the right to cooperate fully in all fraud investigations involving Whitmore Holdings. Any attempt to use her name, her company, or Aureline Mason's reputation for leverage will trigger additional legal action." Daniel took the papers with wet hands. "So that is it? That is the process you asked for?" Evelyn said. Daniel looked past her to Clara. "I didn't know your world was this big." Clara almost smiled, but there was no joy in it. "World was never the issue, Daniel. Your heart was." His face broke then, not dramatically, not loudly, just enough for Clara to see the man she had once loved trying to stand inside the ruins of the man he had become. "I still love you," he whispered. Clara's eyes softened, and that softness hurt him more than anger would have. "No," she said. "You love what you lost. There is a difference." He stepped closer but stopped when security shifted. "Please," he said, "we can start over. I can prove myself. I will leave Vanessa. I will cut off my father. I will do anything." Clara looked at the building behind her. Aureline Mason rose into the rainy sky, full of light, work, memory, and the legacy of a mother who had taught her not to shout her value. Clara had hidden that value for love. She would not hide it again for pity. "I am not punishing you for leaving me," she said. "I am letting you live with the cost of how you left." Daniel lowered his head. The papers in his hand were spotted with rain. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he asked the question that had been waiting beneath all his begging. "Did you ever love me?" Clara's breath caught. She thought of the nights she had stayed beside him when he was sick, the quiet credit extensions, the meals where she had swallowed insults to keep peace, the birthday hope she had carried like a fragile candle. "Yes," she said, "enough to hide my crown, not enough to let you step on it." Daniel closed his eyes. Clara turned away. Evelyn walked beside her. The security officer lifted the umbrella higher, shielding Clara as she stepped toward the glass doors. Daniel remained on the pavement, soaked and silent, holding the papers that ended the life he thought he controlled. Inside the lobby, Clara did not look back, but as the doors closed behind her, Daniel's phone lit up with a message from his father. "They're coming for the house tomorrow." The doors of the Whitmore mansion opened for the last time under the eyes of strangers. Movers carried out covered furniture. Reporters stood behind the gate with cameras. A bank officer held a clipboard near the front steps. The gold family crest above the door had already been removed, leaving a pale mark on the stone where pride used to hang. Richard stood on the driveway without speaking. For years, he had filled rooms with his voice. He had bragged about power, wealth, family name, and the luxury world he believed belonged to men like him. Now he watched strangers place his life into labeled boxes. Daniel stood several feet away, wearing a plain coat and no watch. He did not stand beside his father. Richard had not spoken to him since the bank review turned into a legal storm. The mansion was being sold under pressure. Whitmore Holdings was gone. The family office had been emptied. Old friends no longer called. Richard looked once at Daniel, then turned away. That was all. No forgiveness, no apology, no father and son holding each other through ruin, only silence. Daniel lowered his eyes and walked away before the reporters could shout more questions. Months had passed since Clara signed the authorization that opened every door to the investigation. The results had been colder than gossip and stronger than revenge. Forged certificates, inflated collateral, false luxury assets. Borrowed money dressed as family fortune. The truth had not needed drama, it had only needed records. Daniel now worked under supervision in a small logistics office connected to a company that had asked whether the civil case barred him from non-financial work. Evelyn had confirmed Clara would not interfere with basic employment, as long as Daniel stayed away from Aureline, the investigation, and the Whitmore records. His desk was near the back. His name was not on the door. His phone did not ring with invitations anymore. Sometimes, during lunch, he opened his phone and saw the old clip again. Clara standing under chandeliers, the velvet box in her hands, Vanessa smirking, Daniel raising his glass, then Mr. Bell opening the first lie. The clip still moved through private circles and social media pages with one sentence attached to it. He gave the owner of Aureline Mason a fake Aureline necklace. Every time Daniel saw those words, he felt the same cold pressure in his chest. He had not left a poor wife. He had humiliated the woman who had protected him. He had thrown away real love for fake status, fake jewelry, and a fake future. Vanessa had not survived the scandal either. Her name followed the counterfeit vendor's records. No one remembered her as the elegant woman in the emerald dress. They remembered her as the woman who smiled while another woman was being shamed. The smirk became her shadow. Brand deals disappeared. Charity invitations stopped. Women who once kissed her cheek at events now turned their faces away. She had wanted Clara's place, but she had never understood what Clara's place really was. It was not beside Daniel. It was at the center of an empire Vanessa could not touch. While the Whitmores fell, Clara did not celebrate. She worked. The public expected her to appear cold, proud, and untouchable. Instead, she remained quiet. She gave no cruel interviews. She did not mock Daniel. She did not speak Vanessa's name. She allowed the legal process to finish what the truth had started. Then, 6 months after the birthday party, Aureline Mason announced a new collection, the Alina collection. On the night of the launch, Aureline headquarters looked different from the cold boardroom where Daniel had learned the truth. The marble floors glowed under warm golden lights. White flowers lined the hall, but not the white roses from Clara's birthday. These were small garden flowers like the ones Elena Voss had once kept in a cracked blue vase above her rented booth. At the center of the room stood a glass display. Inside was the first necklace from the collection. It was not loud. It was not heavy. It was shaped with the same gentle curve as the old pendant Clara had worn through every insult, every dinner, every silence, and every heartbreak. Beside it was Elena's original sketch, the one Clara had touched on the morning before everything changed. Guests moved slowly around the display, speaking in low voices. This was not just a luxury launch. Everyone could feel it. It was a daughter bringing her mother's dream back into the light. Clara stood behind a curtain near the stage, watching the room. Mara stood beside her, holding the final program for the evening. "Are you ready?" Mara asked. Clara looked down at her pendant. For most of her life, she had believed quiet meant safe. She had hidden parts of herself because she wanted to be loved without price, without greed, without fear. But hiding had not protected her heart. It had only made the wrong people comfortable. Evelyn stepped closer. "You do not have to prove anything tonight." Clara smiled faintly. "I know." And for the first time, she meant it. When Clara walked onto the stage, the room became still. No one saw Daniel's quiet wife. No one saw Richard's underestimated daughter-in-law. No one saw the woman Vanessa had mocked. They saw Clara Voss, owner, daughter, survivor. She stood beneath the golden lights, wearing her mother's pendant beside the first necklace from the Elena collection. For a brief second, her eyes moved to the empty space beside her. There was no husband there. There was no need for one. Clara faced the room. "My mother taught me that real value survives pressure," she said, "tonight. This collection is for every woman who was treated like glass until she remembered she was diamond." The applause came slowly at first, then filled the hall. Clara did not smile because revenge had made her happy. Revenge was too small a word for what had happened. She smiled because truth had made her free. She announced that part of the profits from the Elena collection would fund legal aid for women rebuilding after betrayal, financial manipulation, and public humiliation. The room went quiet again, but this time the silence was full of respect. Near the back, a young woman wiped her eyes. Layla Morno, 27, a junior event assistant at Aureline Mason and one of the first applicants to Clara's new legal aid fund, watched Clara like she was seeing a door open. Layla had not told many people why she needed help. She only knew that, for the first time in months, she felt less alone. Clara stepped down from the stage after the applause ended. She walked through the display room slowly, stopping before her mother's sketch. For years, she had let her work speak before her name. Now both could speak together. Mara came to her side. "The first pieces have already sold out." Clara looked at the necklace under the glass. "Good, then the fund begins tonight." Evelyn joined them, holding a tablet. "The final divorce order is complete. Daniel signed this morning." Clara was quiet for a moment. There was no sharp pain this time. Only a soft ache like a scar touched by weather. "Did he say anything?" Clara asked. Evelyn hesitated, only that he was sorry. Clara looked toward the guests, toward the women standing near the display, toward Layla wiping her eyes in the back of the room. Then she looked at her mother's sketch. "So am I," Clara said, "but I'm not going back." Outside, cameras flashed as guests entered the launch. Inside, Aureline Mason glowed with the kind of beauty that did not need to beg for attention. It simply existed, strong and bright. Clara touched her mother's pendant one last time. Daniel had given her a fake necklace and demanded separation in front of everyone. His mistress had smiled. His father had bragged about a fortune built on lies, but the appraiser had revealed the truth. And the woman they tried to shame had walked out with her name, her company, her dignity, and her future still untouched. Some women are not destroyed when betrayal exposes them. Some women are finally seen. If this story reminded you that loyalty should never be mistaken for weakness, subscribe for more. And comment, Diamond, if you believe quiet women can still change the whole room.